that one glorious word represents more than just the geography between the Sabine and the Rio Grande. It represents a unique idea and way of life. A life of rugged individualism, proud self-reliance, gritty toughness, and fierce independence. That is what made Texas, and that is what will save her again. Howdy, folks. Sam Houston here. I want to thank you for tuning into the Feed Bandit podcast. Feed Bandit is the Texas first outdoors brand built by rabid Texans, for rabid Texans, and all those who aim to be one someday. We unapologetically promote the ideals that shape our Texas pride and Texas first patriotism through our love of hunting, the outdoors, and the gear and apparel we create. Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Check us out at feedbandit.com. And to repeat that great rallying cry from a former colleague of mine, liberty or death. Now, enough of my talking. Here are a couple of bandits that love Texas as much as I do. Enjoy.
Howdy, friend. Welcome back to the Feed Bandit podcast, brought to you by Texas First Outdoors. Now, what does Texas First Outdoors mean? Well, simply, it means in everything we do as bandits, especially centered around any of the outdoors sports that we like to participate in, but also specifically, you could say politically or in conversations with like-minded folks or not so like-minded folks, we try to at least plant the seed that any true Texan should always be thinking in terms of Texas first. Does this thing, does it exist to benefit Texans? Does it harm Texans? You know, what is the effect of this thing that we're talking about, or this thing I'm being talked about or told about by the news or some worthless politician, some propaganda coming out of the government? Is this thing good for me and good for Texas? That's really what Texas First means, and we just try to meld it with our love of the outdoors. And, while I'm recording this, we're coming up upon what could be considered, and what is considered, I suppose, Texas's birthday. If July 4th can be considered the birth of the United States, then March 2nd can be considered the birth of Texas. The signing of the Texas Declaration of Independence. So it's got me thinking that what would it be like, and this is how we should always be thinking as proud zealot warrior Texans, what it would be like and why if Texas was her own republic again. And on this podcast, we tend to really support this idea. Can't go by a day without seeing some way that the federal government infringes upon your and my, you call it God-given right to in the pursuit of happiness, of freedom and property, constantly violated by Mordor out there, the all-seeing eye in Washington, D.C. And, coming up on March 2nd, and, of course, this being the 250th anniversary on July 4th, it really makes one think about how far the country has fallen away from the initial founding principles of the 13 colonies. And they created the Articles of Confederation, and then second, the coup of the Constitution. There are countless ways that Texas would immediately benefit from leaving the swamp of Mordor. And this is what I want to at least start or end this month of February and kind of walk through starting in the month of March. What would an independent or second Republic of Texas, what would that look like? What could it look like? What are the things that are, what are the albatrosses that are holding back Texans and Texas that are put around our necks by Mordor, D.C.? Those are the things that every single one of them would be the equivalent of an overstep by King George to, the original founding fathers of the United States. Yet they happen every day, frequently in this country. We put up with it and with a smile and say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" What are those things? I can just rattle off a few kind of here off the top of my head, especially some of these, I guess, dealing with things that I deal with as a business owner. And, you out there, fellow business owners, you get the main shaft, truly. We are not, and, what 80 to 90% of all businesses are very small businesses, and they are owned and operated by folks that work their butt off to sometimes barely put food on their table, yet they're taking on significantly more risk, than a lot of people. They are the unsung heroes of this state, and really of the world, are the small entrepreneurs. They are the veterans that should really be put on a pedestal, thanked, borderline worshipped, in my opinion, because nothing would exist without people like that. I'm not saying that to kind of toot my own horn. I'm saying that from a spot of, gosh darn it, it is hard. It is hard. And, it's just, I personally admire everyone out there that's an entrepreneur and busts their ass on a daily basis to put bread on the table. But I mean, let's just say, high level, what would be shed off the backs, and what oppression would be shed off of the backs of Texans the day after leaving Washington, D.C.? Well, one that off the top of my head is our stupid environmental regulations. Most environmental regulations originate out on the left coast in California as really dumb, idiotic ideas, and then somehow pass through the circulatory system all the way to Washington, D.C., where the federal government, in one form or another, institutes that regulation and mandate it, a top-down approach, mandating it upon everybody in this country, whether it really affects them or not, or whether it'll harm more than others or whatnot. One size fits all. Everything from stupid emission mandates, that the federal government pushes out to everybody based on faulty, fraudulent science. Things like the water regulations, things that laws and regulations that are passed down that adversely affect folks here in Texas, because some people out in once again in California, they have water issues, so then they want it to be a nationally mandated issue that has to be foisted upon Texans, thereby harming our people here, our farmers, and whatever else. How about methane emission limits? Well, we got a lot of cows here, so now those are mainly, I think, centered towards leaks from oil and gas operations and things of that nature. And Texas already kind of regulates all that stuff, but the federal government makes them even worse, and in a way, artificially limiting supply of oil and gas, keeping the price high. Now, all that may be due to the lobbyists, that work for the oil and gas industry, wanting to artificially keep prices high. But does that help us as Texans? I would argue not. How about endangered species? The federal government claims the right to be able to come in and say, oh my gosh, you have one, dingleberry spotted horned frog, on this land, or we found a carcass of one or something like that. Well, now we're going to, by federal law, we're going to essentially take this land from you because now you can own it, but you can't do anything with it because of this endangered species. I don't believe that it's anywhere in the federal constitution that is a actual thing that the founders agreed upon. And I promise you no state would have ever ratified it if that was. How about labor and employment laws? You have federal rules that that are mandated across all states. That what people don't realize is, from state to state, even from regions within state, there are different cultures, and always putting in top-down, one-size-fits-all mandates. That's what tends to create tension, because then it's perceived as one group against another. Now, it serves the government well because it always keeps people fighting amongst themselves, but it also proves that one size does not fit all, and any of these laws really should be based on, or really shouldn't exist in my opinion, but can't be top-down applied to a country of 350 million people with very different cultures and very different work ethics and very different industries and all these different things, across the board. You just can't do that. And the federal government may mandate minimum wage, laws and things. Well, in some areas, and in most areas, the minimum wage does cause unemployment because it prevents people from working at a mutually agreed upon price, if that price happens to be lower than what the federal government says it should be. So it artificially inflates unemployment. That would hurt people here in Texas. And then think about all the stupid workplace OSHA laws and things of this nature. It's just absolutely ridiculous. You don't think Texas has enough infrastructure to create its own? Why do we need Mordor to tell us how we should keep our workplace safe? Oh, don't get me started on, how about, national so-called health care? It's not health care. No way. It's sick care, number one, and it's insurance subsidies is what it is. So the federal government essentially created a system where, these insurance companies are like a quasi-government agency that is subsidized through them by law mandating people have some form of insurance. And then when they do that, by subsidizing people to have this insurance, then it ends up paying for a lot more than any insurance should ever pay for. Most insurance should only be there for catastrophic issues. And by it paying for a lot more than it ever should, the providers naturally raise their prices because they're going to get paid one way or the other. So might as well jack up prices to the highest. So then all prices rise. And then what does the government come in and say? Prices are too high. So now we need laws, mandating lower prices or subsidizing folks to be able to afford the higher prices that exist because of government regulation and subsidies in the first place. That's the government self-licking ice cream cone scenario. Get rid of that. Let it all go to private, crowdfunding, things of that nature. The Affordable Care Act would disappear if Texas left. Let's see. How about the ATF, well, that would go away. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution, well, while it would no longer apply to Texas, because Texas is not in the Union, Texas does have, its own amendments about these type of things, and we would be able to just follow those, and then if we have any arguments about that, we would have those arguments and disagreements in Austin, and not in Washington, D.C., where we're trying to convince a bunch of leftist Dingledorfs in California and New York and wherever else to come onto our side, and give our natural right of self-defense back to us without any loopholes. So there's that. Let's see. Oh, I would say another thing that most people don't think about, but it is very detrimental, and it would be things that have to do with stocks, the SEC regulations, things of this nature. Texas could have and maintain its own capital markets here. It would not have to fall under the antiquated, ridiculous rules coming out of Washington, D.C., which now anything that regulates that are essentially bureaucratic regulations, not necessarily laws, that grow off of these laws that have been passed in the past or put through in the past, and they metastasize into this cancer that it becomes a killer of massive regulations that prevent smaller businesses from being able to access funds or be able to compete with the bigger boys. That's why there's always these consolidations, and some companies and industries consolidate and grow and buy all these other ones, grow so big because they're the only ones that can keep up with any of the regulation or the compliance and things of this nature. So it actually destroys competition. So regulation in the end destroys competition because smaller outfits cannot keep up with all that stuff, becomes too expensive, so they go out of business or they sell. And it actually ends up hurting the consumer. So how about if Texas didn't have any of that stuff? It could be a veritable oasis in the desert of worldwide regulation and say, look, we want all productive people and businesses to move here, and you'll be free to grow and do what you want, so long as you don't obviously infringe upon other people, their person, their property, things of this nature. You don't commit fraud. Then come here, and you'll have a free place to grow. Well, because Texas does not have an income tax, so we're not sticking our nose into your business all over the place, So you'll immediately be free of the slavery that comes with an income tax, things of that nature. I don't know, those are just a few things, but think about it. If some of those things were immediately lifted, just those things would within 5 years make Texas the most prosperous country in the world. If that alone is not a reason to get out, to leave the swamp, well, I don't know what is, and I guess Texas would not deserve to leave the swamp if none of those things were compelling enough to get out. So, I don't know, just high-level food for thought. I'm going to aim to get into more detail about certain things in little missives the longer on, or the more we go on through the year. I hope maybe some of this stuff makes you think a little bit. I know it's not the most, or it sometimes can be a little dry, the subject, but in the end, you got to think about, what is your most precious resource? Really, what is it? Well, it's your time. It's the one thing you spend but can never get back. As you're listening to this, you're spending your time that you'll never get back. What is one of the biggest things in your life that steals your most precious resource from you, your time. That steals your time from you. Your time being your life that you cannot get back. Well, that would be the government. And how do they do that? They do it mainly through three ways. Number one, they do it through taxation. Taxation of your income and everything you do. Because the money they take from you, that money was earned over time in your life. And when they take that money that was representative of that time of your life, they are taking that time from you. They are stealing your life from you. Some could argue that is a form of slavery. What else does the federal government do? Well, it regulates. And what do regulations do? They cause hurdles that you have to jump through and things you got to do in order to abide by the regulations. Well, that takes time. And time you're not otherwise spending with your family, spending on your business, spending doing things you like to do. Why? Because you have to abide by some idiotic bureaucratic regulation. And what's the last way, main way the federal government steals your life from you? It's through inflation. It creates money, digits out of thin air that devalue the existing digits, the money that's in your savings, in your bank account. So essentially, even though the same dollar amount may be there, what that dollar amount can buy decreases every year. And by it decreasing every year, it's the same effect as taxation, what we just talked about. So that's constantly happening, and most people don't see it or realize it. But that is an exclusive power of the Federales in Mordor. They are stealing your life from you every day by printing more money. So just remember, your most important asset is time. So anything that we could possibly do to limit the theft of that time would be a boon for everybody, right? And one thing that I can see that, yes, right now is a long shot, but is the most obvious thing, is for Texas to leave the swamp of D.C. and go on and create the Second Republic of Texas. And, of course, I'm going to throw this in there just as a quick, throwaway line, but I'll harp on it a little later, and not incorporating or adopting any of the federal laws that would not exist anymore here without the federal government. If that were to happen within 5 years, 10 years at the most, Texas would be by far the most prosperous country in the world, in the history of the world, easily. So I don't know. Take that with you, noodle on it. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. But it seems pretty obvious to me. So, think about if you want to join, be one of the new 300. This is this little designation that we have here on the Feed Bandit podcast for the new 300, modeled after the old 300 of Stephen F. Austin, the first settlers, where we're the new 300. We're the new 300, meaning 300K, that of folks that will be on the front lines of Texas secession and independence again. So count yourself among the new 300. I hope you do. If you are, sign up to our email list. We'd really appreciate it if you followed us there. And one other thing. If you have a flagpole in your front yard, or if you have a business that has a flagpole, or you know of someone that does, in my opinion, any good Texan should either, 1, only fly the Texas flag, 2, never fly the U.S. flag, or 3, only fly, if you're going to fly the U.S. flag, you only fly it below the Texas flag, and you have to fly it upside down. So you're signifying that you acknowledge and you know that the United States is under duress right now, because it is. The number one threat to us as Texans is the federal government, and as an extension of all Americans is the federal government. So just remember that, if you got that flagpole, Texas first, Texas first, Texas first. And if you have to have the U.S. flag, under the Texas flag and upside down for duress. You can actually go to feedbandit.com, check out some of our t-shirts. One of our t-shirts out there has just that on there, on the back. Let's see. It is called, what did we call that one? Oh, yeah, the Proper Texas Flagpole. So get you one of those. Get you one or two of those shirts. I think they really speak for themselves. They're great shirts. Very comfy. And, with that, I'm going to leave you on this one. So come back for more. We'll have more outdoors discussion, Texas First Outdoors discussion for you in the future. A lot more Texas history and Texas talk. So I really appreciate you listening. Give us a shout at howdy@feedbandit.com with any feedback you have. We'd love to hear it. And with that, I will leave you on this one. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next one. All right, thank you. Take care.
Well, I hope the Bandits gave you an interesting episode that either entertained or educated you. Or better yet, both. Hell, I told them this podcasting thing looks harder to do than defeating Santa Anna. So if you would, please help them out by sharing it with all your like-minded friends to help the Bandits get the word out. And don't forget to check us out at feedbandit.com and grab some gear and apparel to support the cause of Texas. Remember, Texas, above all else, preserve the tradition, protect the legacy. Finally, as I said some time ago on the eve of the great battle, and I vigorously repeat here again, be men, be free men, that your children may bless their father's name. Well, fellow bandit, until next time.